Episode of the Fundication Show with Mr. Neal Bawa.
Hello.
We are super excited to have him here, and this episode and all episodes, frankly, of the Fundication Show are sponsored by iShare. And so what we're doing today is we're going to take you behind the scenes and let you watch what it looks like for us to do an interview, for Christian and I to do an interview here in the studio.
Check it out. I'm ready.
Ready, Neal?
Absolutely. Always good.
Now, Christian, this is your main.
Okay.
It's my name too, right?
Intro.
Yeah.
Okay. We got a lot of cameras going on now. Okay. Okay. Okay.
That's what.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to another episode of the Fundication Show, sponsored by iShare. My name is Kalani Michelle, and I am here with my co-host, Mr. Christian Sadler, and we have a special guest today, Mr. Neal Bawa. Before we hop into the interview, though, I want Christian to tell Neal a little bit more about what iShare is up to in the industry.
Yeah, Neal, it's really great to have you here, first of all. And I know that you've actually done transactions with some of the partners of iShare. So
That's
we
right.
have a relationship there, which is kind of nice.
Yes, it's absolutely thrilling to be here for that reason. There's this strong connection that I feel with iShare. Actually was one of the first ones to write a review because I feel like what you're doing is extremely potent. It's extremely necessary. So many people have said, someone should do this. And then nobody did it for a long time. So I'm thrilled that it's happening.
Yeah, and usually I would talk about the different benefits that we bring to the table as iShare. I wonder if you can share what you know already about iShare and what we're doing, and then I can fill in the gaps for the audience.
I think just speaking from the perspective of investors, right? They want transparency, they want liquidity, they want choice. And I'm not afraid of any of those things. I think in any environment, there needs to be transparency, there needs to be choice. And I think that we've been a little bit of a black box, and I think that that prevents the industry from growing. And I think in so many different ways, fundication brings that liquidity, that transparency, that comparison. And I think if someone's afraid of that, then maybe they need to step back a little bit and allow someone else to come through. So I think the vision that you guys have put together is going to create a better, more accountable industry to our investors, give them access to liquidity, give them the ability to move in and out of projects more transparently. I think that this is a step to eventually the level of liquidity that we see in the US stock market.
Yes, and that's exactly what we're going for with our liquidity service. That as it's a benefit to the passive investor, it's also a benefit to those that are raising funds, right? Because when they can give that type of liquidity, they're more likely to have people invest. I mean, one of the biggest reasons people don't invest in real estate is just simply the liquidity.
Completely locked in, completely illiquid, right? I don't want it to be illiquid. I want my investors to be able to move in and out and just as efficiently. I think that you're right. To me, I think like I'm getting 3 out of 10 investors, and that 70% that I'm missing is simply because they are afraid of lock-in.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a growth challenge for the industry.
Yeah. And we also want to be an ally for those sponsors out there and help make sure that they have the resources to get things done. So a couple of things that we do for them is our top-off services and our pref equity, which I think you know about both of those. And in fact, I think you've probably even done them yourself.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic service because what's happening at this point in time is there's challenges happening in the marketplace because of interest rate hikes. So we have these wonderful properties where, we might have to raise $13 million instead of $10 million because of interest rate changes. And so we get our raises to 10 or 11 and everything looks good, and then we get stuck. And at the end, when you get stuck, you're just bombarding your investors with information about that project again and again and again. It doesn't really make sense. We lose investors, they unsubscribe. It's just a big loss for us, that final $1 or $2 million for a project. So top off is just a brilliant strategy. And I think that it would be one of your most used strategies as you enter the marketplace and everyone becomes aware of what you're doing. It's just a phenomenal strategy to have.
Yeah, our goal is to be that resource and to be able to help when you do go with an update to your investors, to be able to say, we have a plan and we have a solution.
Yes. Yes. I think that you're a solution provider to the industry at that point, and it's really much needed, especially at this point in time where the Fed's really making things difficult. I mean, the loan amounts are moving so much every month that I truly don't know how much equity I need to raise.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So for those of you who don't understand what we're talking about with top-off services, we are going to approve 50 sponsors. And of those 50 sponsors, we're gonna give them access to the pre-iShare Real Estate Liquidity Fund. And within that fund, we will do top-off services and prep equity, which is bringing in the funds that you need as a sponsor at the most critical times so that you can move forward. And most importantly, I think, is avoid cash calls.
Yes, and I think that second piece, that pref equity fund piece is fascinating to me. The timing is so incredible for this because we have a strange environment right now, right? So the industry went through in 2021, 2022, the greatest rent growth in its history. And I'm talking about multifamily, but that pretty much applied across the board for just about every asset class. So we went through massive increases in rent growth. So that was good. But on the other hand, we have a huge number of bridge loans that are now getting to the point where in the second half of the year, they're going to start to reset. And because of what the Federal Reserve is doing with interest rates, a lot of those properties, which are fundamentally good properties, they are performing properties, they're hitting net operating income, cannot refi due to no fault of their own, right? So you could have said, well, all of these could have been fixed rate. But the truth is 80-90% of all the money that the industry's made in the last 5 years, colossal amount of money, we're talking, billions or tens of billions of dollars, has been through the flexibility of bridge loans. So that's what 9 out of 10 operators chose. And well, right now that doesn't seem like a good option. We couldn't have possibly known 2 years ago that this was going to happen, that there was going to be a war in the Ukraine. So now we have this situation where these properties cannot refinance, but because the net operating income is there, the performance is there, if a pref equity piece comes in, then there's enough liquidity for us to roll over into a perm loan. So the property goes from bleeding cash every day, even though its net operating income is running above pro forma simply because of interest rates, and pref equity comes in from fundication, and boom, the next day the property is cash flowing. That couldn't have happened in the last 10 years. So the opportunity just exists right now, and we're talking maybe 10,000 performing properties that can benefit from this. So that service is an absolute godsend for the industry.
Yes, and this is one thing that we've talked about with our CEO and president is the one thing that we wished is we started this just a little bit earlier, right? But we are getting a crucial time where people are looking for these services.
I don't think you're late because here's what happened, right? So in the first half of 2020, so Q1 and Q2 of 2020, there were no transactions. There was this thing called COVID that you might have heard of. So no one transacted anything. And so in the second half of 2020, there were thousands of transactions, right? Now flash forward 3 years from second half of 2020 to second half of 2023. Well, 3 years, those loans are resetting. And because of the financial conditions, a lot of these properties are not eligible for refinance unless there's a pref equity piece that comes in. So I think that the biggest service that you can perform for the industry is actually the second half of this year and then Q1 of next year, because that's when the bulk of those properties reset. Once that's done, then we'll have some breathing room. And for now, we're using fixed debt. So the need is going to sort of die away. But I think it starts to peak in Q4 and then Q1 of next year, where there's going to be a lot of good operators with verifiable net operating income levels over performance levels that are going to say, all we need is a bridge to get us to fixed debt. And what's nice is that for the fundication show and your resources, that's an amazing opportunity. Whenever we put money into a property, we take a risk. We take a risk that it might work out or it might not. But here, this is so unique. By simply the act of injecting that equity and closing on a fixed loan, you're guaranteed to move from non-performance to performance. I don't think this has ever happened in my career before.
Well, and that's one of the beautiful things I think that we're bringing to the investors into the fund is we're bringing them into something that we have that verifiable proof, and we're bringing them into short cycle investments so they can get a compounding effect on their money.
They absolutely can, and I think the window is short on this, but I recently pitched one of my investors on this, and he said, Neil, this is absolutely the best thing to do right now with interest rates, because what you're doing is you're getting the best of both sides, right? By going into a fixed rate, you're moving away from this next 2 years of whatever the Fed wants to do next. You're completely insulating yourself from that, but you're also getting away from the will this property work question, because clearly the property is already working, right, for you to even consider it. I mean, if the property is below NOI, just skip that one, go to the next one. There's gonna be thousands of them. So the choice is incredible. So I think this is, at this point, the best deal in the marketplace to be inside of a recap fund or a pref fund, as opposed to be putting money into a brand new property and having all these, unknown consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our audience may not know you, Neal, so before we just keep, diving deeper and deeper, because I love the conversation already, give us your background. I'd love for you to take us all the way back, to before you knew anything about real estate to where you're at now.
Sure. So I'm a geek, a nerd. I'm a computer science professional, data scientist by profession that accidentally found my way into real estate and did it completely backwards. So most people that start with real estate start with a single family rental. In my case, I started with a 30,000 square foot building that I had to build from scratch for my technology company. So my boss walked in very angry one day and said, General Motors, we were tenants of GM, doesn't like what we're doing. You know what? All the people that are walking in and out are messing up their carpets. I'm never going to be a landlord again. Let's go and buy our own building and build it. And I was like, yes, Paul, you go do it. And he was like, no, Neal, you go do it. So I was a junior partner. So basically I was handed this job of buying and building a campus from scratch. So it was trial by fire. I made lots of mistakes. Luckily, no investors. It was just the company's cash and we didn't have loans. And so we made a bunch of mistakes, but we learned a lot. And we were like, wow, this is really great, because at the end of that process, his taxes and my taxes very drastically went down because we had this depreciation from this magnificent building that we had built. And the other thing was, because we built it custom for our use, we realized how much money that saves our business. So as soon as we finished building this first one, we went straight into building the second campus. Then we ended up building 6 of them. And so I ended up becoming a real estate developer without having a single investor. And so that's how my story started. Once I got addicted to the tax benefits, right? I live in California. I was paying 55% of my income in taxes, and all of a sudden I'm paying nothing. And I was like, what? This is how can this possibly be legal? It took me a while to dig in and realize depreciation is completely legal. And is an incredible benefit of real estate. So then I went through the process of, let me buy a bunch of single families. I bought a dozen of those for myself. Then I started buying them for my family. And then I started hosting a meetup group in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it was a meetup group for geeks and nerds to use data science to exploit the gaps in real estate, to basically hack real estate. And it grew from 4 people to now about 75,000 people that follow us.
Wow.
So it's been an incredible amount of fun, but all across the premise is data science allows you to do better in real estate than anyone else. It's not about Excel, it's about large data sets and churning through them to find locations that everyone else is going to find 18 months from now. You need 18 months to win. And we're constantly churning through those databases, and that's what my group is all about.
Yeah, that's really incredible.
That's impressive. So you have a $1 billion multifamily portfolio
That's
now, right?
That's
Over 31 projects? Is that
31
okay.
projects, we're a little shy of 5,000 units.
Okay, and 10 states.
Yes, and that's the part that's the hardest, right? Because, my good friend, Mike Landerson, he says, focus on a certain number of markets, focus on what you do. The problem is data science drives me away from that, because data science says, well, this year, the best market in the US is in Utah. Well, next year, the best market in the US is in Tennessee. And so it forces me to break one of the fundamental rules of